want to share with the last part. Your mission Father, we thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you so much for keeping us safe in our absolute reality of life. Thank you so much for the stories that we had with the few days of week that also as we come before you, and as we come to ourselves, please speak to us. Help us to clear in our life. And the beauty is that your Son found when he delivered you the word. Be and also be in life. As we worship you to the next. And pray also to the Lord.
Amen. Happy Sabbath. Good to see you. Almost full hall. Soon we should ask for another bigger hall. For international church, going upstairs, they go downstairs. Because, it's very inspiring to see more faces, more people, and it's really, really good to see you all. Because this week is over more or less, we are in this 7th day, because we are 7-day Adventists, and today is the Sabbath. We have this special day to kind of switch off from this usual busy life and kind of reflect on our life until now, spend time with God, with each other. And I think it's important because otherwise we're in this constant race and we could not stop. And, sometimes when the long distance runner or this cyclist or the skiers, they're usually before the final, but they just look back, but they still go running. They kind of don't stop because it's important just to know who is behind them, how close is he or she behind them, but they don't stop. But in our case, I think it's important to stop, to relax, to have a really good time, just special time which is beyond this time which is otherwise really full of adventures, experiences, sad moments, good moments, but still it's too much pressing us. And we remember this, one of the most famous for us at least, verses in Bible, Isaiah 58:13. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, a holy day of the Lord, honorable, and so on. So we kind of, this verse tells us we should kind of stop our feet like they move usually and kind of move differently, think differently on this day. Because every week is like a journey in our life, and we kind of walk through it or run through it, fly through it, depends on the situation, whether we are inspired, whether we're sometimes it's very hard to walk through the week because we have problems, work problems. Sometimes we run through it because we want to kind of escape from this situation, or we run with pleasure, with things filled with love, something which is kind of gives us wings. But if we look back, it's important, I think, if we look back to see what has happened during this time. And if you look back, we could count, for example, the blessings we got. We count the moments we had which were important for us, for the others. We could remember a good story which happened. We could remember a moment that inspired us, or something which made us sad, but still we need to kind of forgive, like we were discussing in the Sabbath school. Forgiveness. Maybe Sabbath is a really good time to forgive people. Sometimes even without waiting for them to ask for forgiveness. Not easy, but we have this whole day, so we could focus on the blessings, on the things we could kind of forget, because it was forgive and forget. So some things we could really forget because they otherwise become heavier and heavier if we carry them on. And more often than I think, yeah, very often at least, we are so busy that we become ignorant of God's influence, impact, guidance in our life, and about His protection, of His presence. And that is exactly the time when we could stop and kind of review, look back and review what has been our life so far and how good God was with us. And if you remember this story in 2 Kings chapter 6, we could just have a look there. And it's a story when the king of Syria was making war against Israel. And he was a bit upset because whatever he was thinking as a military strategy, the king of Israel was one move ahead, and he knew what's happening. And then he asked his servants, who is a traitor among us? And they say no one, but there is this prophet in Israel, and he tells the king of Israel the words you speak in your bedroom. So the king of Syria sends people to catch this, and he understands, he got to know where he is at the moment in Dothan. So we could read chapter 6 and verse 14. We could start from 14. Therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrendered the city. And when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said to him, "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" Yeah, what shall we do exactly in some cases where we are surrounded by the enemy by problems? So he answered, "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed and said, "Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So you could see that in this very difficult situation, which is really kind of question whether they survived this siege or not. The prophet knew that God is with them, and he has sent his army to support them, to save them. So for him was kind of not so easy, but still it was a moment he didn't feel fear because he knew that God is with him. So I was thinking that the same we are in many situations where we kind of ask ourselves like, what shall we do? And then if we are kind of so close to God, we could see that we are surrounded by army of how it is said here, horses, chariots, and angels of fire all around us who are about to save us, whatever we go through. So it's about our attitude towards God and how much our eyes, the eyes of our soul are open, and how much God is visible and invisible in our life. And do we often ask Him to open our eyes and to see His protection, and to feel that we are confident that we could go through this challenging situation. Sometimes even the kind of the good situation when you are inspired and feeling full of joy and everything is going well, we still need to know and feel God's presence, because next time behind the corner there might be something waiting for us which is not so good, and I might go back to it with the story. But But we also read, now there is like we talk about climate change and the problems anyway, fires, floods, Germany, and we just recently read and heard about, especially in our region, my country in Bulgaria, but also more like tragedies in Greece, Macedonia, and there was this headline in one of the newspapers. Athens besieged by fire, apocalyptic scenes hit Greece as Athens besieged by fire. And there is this subtitle, the city is surrounded by flames on the ground. There are tales of heroism and fear for the future. So you see how things are going on now in this life, and we're pressed by and kind of surrounded, like besieged by all this fear, pandemic and fires and uncertainty about the future. And it's really important in this case, kind of, and when we ask ourselves, what shall we do, kind of ask, not in this case the prophet, but God himself, to open our eyes and see the protection around us. And if we are kind of not feeling this connection with God, we should ask first for this connection so that he could be invited in our life, so that he could be our protection and intervene. So we think about this, but sometimes it's really good to have this time when we look back and see what happened, how God has led us through this moment of life. In the case of the Sabbath, the 7 days, the Sabbath is really good cycle, because it really gives you really kind of short-term perspective. Of course, it could give you perspective for a longer period, but at least you could see these 6 days, how they developed and what you have learned from it, and from this experience, and from the connection with people, and with, how you behaved towards them, and how you behave towards God. But in order to kind of to look back, it's usually good to have been working, doing something, moving from one place to another, from one situation to another, from one task to another. Because otherwise, if you sit in one place at home doing nothing, of course, there's not much to look at back. And travel in general, and I'm talking now because I'm also kind of under influence of my recent travel to Sweden, that it really gives you something new, gives you new experiences, new tastes, new feelings, even emotions. You meet people, different people, which who hasn't been in your life before. And it kind of, this travel makes you, I mean, not better person, but person with more experiences. Like it creates a set of experiences which kind of become part of your life. It's not like you, you don't get anything. Even the travel, the journey was not very easy, not very joyful. You still learn something from it. And I'll tell you here one story from life, and then we continue with one story from the Bible. And the story from the life was that we were in Sweden, and we had a lot of good experiences there. It has been my first time there, and when, for example, you enter and go to Stockholm, and Stockholm is not like one place on the land, but it's kind of spread around on islands and islets and peninsulas and so on. It's like a archipelago. So when you enter with the ship, you kind of like you are like in a movie. You see next to you these beautiful small islands and with beautiful houses there, like you see like almost in a fairy tale, like you could not believe your eyes, because you're on one ship, and all of a sudden out of the sea, this open sea, you get into this kind of gallery of really beautiful places and nature, and you kind of imagine who is living in these houses, how they have these thousands of boats, and they sometimes go to work by boat, not by train or car. It's really beautiful. But on the other hand, of course, it's we have this other experiences. For example, we had these first 2 days in Stockholm, and then in one hotel, nice hotel, of course, in the town, nothing special, but still the view was towards one very beautiful hill, and obviously during the winter they are skiing there and so on. And afterwards we had another good small house in the countryside. But then we found ourselves in a hotel which was like, I don't know, maybe the worst hotel I had been in my life, which was next to the airport first, but secondly, we were facing, instead of a beautiful gardens, whatever, water, we were facing some car repair garage and something else, which is really, and it was Saturday, Sunday, but they were working on Saturday, so more or less there was also kind of industrial noise from there, and also the breakfast. I wouldn't tell more because we'll have lunch later, but yes, but you go there, you'll be hungry after the breakfast, or even more worse. So anyway, so that there was not it was not only beautiful and kind of perfect situation, but the travel brings you experience and you learn to handle them. And on top of this, everything with this hotel, they were training the whole day during the first day in this place. So, but in the end, the perfect vacation, you could say. What I was reading recently, because I'm now reading again, like chapter by chapter, the Bible, and I reached maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, yes, one chapter which somehow was not so easy to read, and we could have a look at it. It's Numbers 33. And there are some chapters in the Bible which are really not so easy to read, because, for example, there is kind of list of names, list of places, and you don't get so much the idea why this is in the Bible so much. So we have this, actually the whole book of Numbers is really interesting, because it kind of presents the journey of Israel through the desert, and many things happen there, many stories. You remember, for example, what was it? Chapter 14, for example, was just different stories. They were rebelling, for example, 12, for example, dissension of Aaron and Miriam against Moses. And then chapter 14, when Israel refuses to enter Canaan and so on. There are many stories, and it's really interesting, engaging stories. But then we come to chapter 33, and all of a sudden, we kind of stop and kind of look back and see what is happening. And it just started to read about the journey of Israel to reach to the promised land, to the boundaries of Canaan. And it's not very exciting, but still, when I was thinking about this, it's really important. And let's see because it will be really very hard maybe for you to listen almost 50, because it finishes more or less this inventory of the travel by verse 15. But if we could read from verse 5 of chapter 33 of Numbers. Then the children of Israel moved from Ramazes and camped at Sukkot. They departed from Sukkot and camped at Etam, which was on the edge of the wilderness. They moved from Etam and turned back to Pi Hirorot, which is east of Baal Zephon, and they camped near Migdol. They departed from before Chai Harot and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness, went 3 days' journey into the wilderness of Etam and camped at Marah. They moved from Marah and came to Elim. At Elim there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, so they camped there. And then they moved from Elam and camped by the Red Sea. They moved from the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness of Sin. They journeyed from the wilderness of Sin and camped at Dovka, and they departed from Dovka and camped at Alush. They moved from Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink, and so on. So you see how kind of detailed is this journey, and somehow for God and for it was important to kind of let them kind of to see back what was their journey to this promised land. And if you kind of look at the some of the words which are mostly kind of mentioned here, it's about wilderness and water. So it's like being thirsty, being kind of at need of something, suffering more or less, and then you reach to place where there's water, and kind of also like symbolically you refresh yourself, also physically. And it's interesting that I haven't noticed it before, but in verse 10, they moved from the Red Sea, second part, and camped in the wilderness of Sin. And this Sin is actually, of course, a place, name of a place, but it's also kind of symbolically, we could see that they were kind of walking through the wilderness of Sin, kind of state. God was testing them and kind of trying to test their heart. And it's really important kind of to see also talking about ourselves, also our travel with God, how we have walked with God and how we have went through the wilderness of life, because sometimes life could be really wilderness where there is no water, there is no help, where there is no hope, and we need some people, something to help us, and we earn for water, for some help and hope and so on. And I mentioned before at the Sabbath lesson, but we could read also Deuteronomy 8, 2 and chapter 8, verse 1 and 2, Deuteronomy, and see what is there about exactly how we should look back and how should we kind of assess our life and our work with God. So every commandment which I command you today, you must be careful to observe, that you may live and multiply and go in and possess the land of which the Lord swore to your fathers. And now important also. And you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. And in every case, when we look back, we could really understand how first God was with us, but secondly, how we were behaving during this time. What was our heart? Was it really about God first? Was it about really people needs first, or was it about us? Were we kind of keeping God's commandments, all of them, but deep in our hearts, not like Pharisees, just kind of showing them that we are faithful Christians, but we were just really Christians by heart and by spirit, and this will show us how much we have been faithful to God and to his commandments. So I think every one of us has his life with God one way or another. And if you kind of close your eyes and remember some points of this travel with God, you will find out so many interesting stories, maybe people. For example, if I could remember this person who first has been talking to me about God and how I was resisting, and then it took time and years and so on, how I was very resistant to kind of go. There was this church in the middle of Sofia, the central church, and the people usually after service go out and they more or less fuel the sidewalk. So after the service, you could see almost a crowd of people in front of the church. And in Bulgaria, it's, and I think maybe in Russia and many other countries, it's like, of course, Adventists are considered as a sect, and I was so much. First, I knew everything. I was even keeping the Sabbath and so on, but I was kind of not even ready to walk along this sidewalk, and was walking on the other side, so that I was almost ashamed to be kind of mixing or just going through this crowd of people who were, I mean, not so much deep in my heart I was connected to. So there are so many times we could remember things about our work with God, and it's important to kind of remember, especially times when we were kind of unfaithful or not ready, or just we were really afraid, being fully submitting ourselves to God, and also times where we were really kind of standing for God and being like a light in somebody's life, like we talked, I think, last time in the Bible study, that we could be not like the full life because we are reflecting only the life of Jesus, but still we have some wisdom, some knowledge which could lead somebody even one step ahead, closer to God, and we should use this light to be light for His life. So it's really important kind of to look back and see all this work with God, our travel, our journey with God, and I think that's why also this Numbers 33 was really so detailed about all the steps, and of course some details about the water or the wilderness, about the names which sometimes have deep meaning and so on. So in a way, if you look back, it's also about to remember, and like we read already in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2, and you shall remember that God, Lord your God, led you all the way these 40 years. These many years you have lived with Him. It could be 1 year, might be 50 years. I'm not sure. Somebody of us not so old yet, but there are people who have been living with God for a long time. And some people are just stepping into this role. But it's important to look back so that we remember. Because also remember, it's also one of the most used and favorite, let's say, words to convey a commandment from God. For example, together, for example, come, remember, and in Deuteronomy 5:15, you could read 5:15. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm. Or remember the Sabbath. And about remembering, it's important that we have at least two ways that influence us, that make us think about our life. One is when we look back and see how God led us. This gives us assurance that He will lead us ahead. And it's another aspect that we look back with hope and we feel kind of safe with walking further with God. Otherwise, we don't feel fear because we remember how bad was our past, and we don't feel fear because we know that God is with us. And it's important also that this faith, based on this fact, is based on the fact of your life. It's not like you heard from somebody about his faith, about his work with God. It's about your work with God. And it's kind of personal testimony. It's not about kind of telling in third person he did this and it happened to him like a miracle, whatever. You could that's another layer, of course, of faith, that you kind of believe what the Bible says, but we also believe also because it happened to you and God led you personally through the desert, to the wilderness of your life. And you remember or at least that's important to look back and remember how that happened, because everything is personal. Otherwise, if we will be saved personally. We could not be saved as a church together, like everybody is taken because we belong to this place. But everybody has his personal relationship with God, and we have been tested, and we have tested God in many ways. and but he also invites us to say, saying in Psalm 34, verse 8, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him." Psalm 34, verse 8. And also, as we already said, looking back is also a way to look forward ahead, because kind of it's you turn from the past and somehow you turn then your eyes to the future with uncertainty, anger, fear, or with hope and especially for Christians with big hope that you enter a better life when this life is over. And we know that sometimes looking back is not a good thing, because the Israelites were looking back to Egypt with almost returning with kind of regretting that they left Egypt, because there were so many good things in Egypt. They could eat meat and everything, and now they are kind of on a special diet in the desert. So we could look back and not forgiving somebody and keep these grudges, whatever, hold grudges, and have being still angry, not unforgiving. Of course, this is not a good way of looking back, and somehow that's why God gives us and invites us to forgive like He has forgiven us, and kind of clean our hearts fully and wash our hearts in His blood. This is really important about remembering, because usually we don't forget, or we always remember to eat, to breathe, to have good time, to look for better job and so on. But it's important also to remember exactly this special life we have, this life which sometimes is invisible, our special relationship with God. Otherwise, we'll be really only on one level people, but we won't be people, spiritual people who have been much richer by these experiences. And memories are really important, and when you have really good memories with people, that are kind of binding you together, but also memories kind of, if you bind you together with God, then it will be much more precious, because it's like a saving memory, or at least contributes to your saving relationship with God. So it's important, and I beg you again today to look back and remember your work with God, and to read the signs He gave you, to kind of count all the blessings, all the places you went through with Him, and that will make you really blessed and somehow filled with gratitude. So the end of this story, I started with leaving this hotel, which was maybe not the worst hotel, but among the first few worst hotels in my life, was that we were also running to find a place in the old town of Stockholm, which is again one island. So you need to cross one bridge, another bridge, and Stockholm is like a nightmare for driving if you are not there. Know the system, because there are so many bridges and viaducts, and also many tunnels to go under. That it's really you could get crazy, and especially if you haven't been there. So the idea was we drive there and go on time, like in 40 minutes, to have this free tour, guided tour in the middle, in the old town of Stockholm. So we were driving quickly as possible, and in the end we of course get lost a bit, because now there are so many constructions in the city that once you get into them, it's almost impossible to get out. So you need to move around, drive around to find the place. But anyway, we almost went on time, but with the car, we couldn't leave the car before that, so that we go all of us. So I was driving them, and then left them where this group was gathering, and then I left. And then when I was trying to get out, I saw there is like a really special structure, like a punishment for drivers. So there is this like two rails. You need to kind of to when they have this in the garage, you need to go into it, and under it they look at the car. But this is like high up, and you have this rail, and in the middle there is a special punishment beam, like it's like a metal beam. So you need to go with the car so precisely that if you fall, then of course you start catching the car, and you fall on this beam in the middle. And I was trying to go it back, but there's one way. So the only way, I don't know, maybe this is a special kind of hidden punishment for the tourists to get so close to the old town. Because there was one car, taxi, it went through this. And I was trying there, of course, almost my hands shaking because I know that the car could be broken. And of course, I was slowly going there. Of course, I fell. And of course, it started to scratch, and you feel that your car is kind of moving through this metal, and on the other hand, is scratching the other edge. And it was really a miracle to get out of the, even more miracle that I went back to some parking place to stop and go back. Even I was almost halfway and could listen to this guided tour, which was really interesting about Stockholm. But the idea was that we had these experiences during this travel, most of them really exciting. We had such experience. Kylie almost broke her leg exactly on the way to the harbor and to the ferry. It was really not exactly perfect on one hand, but now when I look back, I see how God was led. Of course, this car could have stayed there, broken in the middle of Old Town, and blocking, I don't know, the traffic of half of Stockholm, at least this part of, and also Kylie could have broken her leg and stayed there, and so on. It was really special time, and it's on the one hand it's nothing. I mean, if you look at the surface, but on the other hand, if you kind of see the alternative, and if God was not there to kind of push the car away from this situation and help Kylie not to break her leg and so on, it could have been much worse, and it could have gotten back with much worse memories. But now this kind of a more lively and more kind of interesting story, but it's part of the whole story, which was really nice, good vacation. I think in the life is the same. If we kind of keep on to God's hand and kind of hold on, we might have these broken legs and broken cars, or at least hurt body and mind and so on. But if you still continue, after we look back and see that, okay, that was a good journey, and I was really glad to be on it with my family, with God on the top and leading us. So it's important. And then we could remember how when Samuel in 1 Samuel 7:2 said, then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shen, and called its name Ebenezer, saying, thus far the Lord has helped us. So I think it's important every time on Sabbath or any evening, morning, to look back, to remember how God led us until now, and say to ourselves or the people we pray with, thus for the Lord has helped us. So let us count the blessings of God and be blessed by His presence. Amen.
most,